In this episode, we are going to make a handful of important macOS tools feel much more approachable by connecting each one to a simple support job that beginners can understand. Many new technicians hear names like Finder, iCloud, FileVault, Time Machine, and Terminal and assume these are advanced features meant only for experienced Mac users. That is not the best way to think about them. These tools and features are part of everyday support because they shape how files are found, how data is synchronized, how storage is protected, how backups are restored, and how technicians gather basic information when something does not look right. Once you understand what each one is really for, the name stops sounding intimidating and starts sounding useful. The goal here is not to turn a beginner into a power user overnight. The goal is to make each feature feel like a clear answer to a clear kind of problem, so Mac support feels more organized and less mysterious. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Finder is the best place to begin because it is one of the main ways users interact with files, folders, drives, and common storage locations on a Mac. A beginner should think of Finder as the everyday file workspace of macOS. If a user says they cannot find a document, does not understand where a download went, thinks an external drive is missing, or is confused about the difference between local storage and cloud-synced content, Finder is often the first place to look. It helps users browse locations, open folders, search for content, move files, and see connected storage in a more visual way. That matters because many support issues are really file management issues wearing different clothes. A person may say the Mac lost their file when the file is simply in a different folder than they expected. A user may think a drive is broken when the drive is connected but not being viewed in the right place. Finder helps make those situations easier to understand. A strong beginner habit is to stop treating files as if they float around the system without structure. Finder works best when the technician understands that files live in real locations and that those locations matter. Desktop, documents, downloads, applications, and other common folders are not just names on a screen. They are the places where users build routines, and when those routines break, the problem often feels larger than it really is. A user who saves a document to one place and later looks for it in another may believe the file disappeared, even though nothing was actually lost. Finder helps technicians explain that difference in a calm and practical way. Search, folder views, sorting, and common sidebar locations all help reduce confusion when people are not sure where their content lives. Good support often begins by helping the user understand where they are looking, what Finder is showing, and how macOS is organizing the files they depend on every day. Finder also matters because it is where local storage, external storage, and cloud-related file behavior often become visible to the user. A file may appear in Finder but not be stored in quite the way the user assumes. An external drive may show up, disappear, or look different depending on whether the system recognizes it fully. A folder may be available, but the user may not understand whether it is stored only on the Mac, also stored in the cloud, or currently syncing between devices. This is why Finder is not just a digital filing cabinet. It is the place where many support questions about file management become visible. A beginner technician should feel comfortable using Finder to answer practical questions such as where the file is, whether the drive is present, whether the user is looking at local content or synced content, and whether the Mac is showing storage in a way the user understands. That clarity solves many normal support calls without needing any deeper repair work. iCloud becomes much easier to understand when you stop thinking of it as a magic cloud and start thinking of it as a service that helps keep certain data, settings, and files connected across Apple devices. That can be very helpful for users because it creates convenience. A photo taken on one device may appear on another. A document started on one Mac may be available later on a different Mac or another Apple device. Certain settings and app information can follow the user in ways that feel smooth and modern. But that same convenience can create confusion when the user does not understand what is being synchronized and what is staying only on the local device. A beginner technician should not treat iCloud as something mysterious. It is a synchronization and service layer tied to the user's Apple account. And once you understand that, many support questions become much simpler. The real task is to figure out what the user expected to follow them, what actually followed them, and what may still be local. One of the most common beginner support issues with iCloud is the difference between storage, synchronization, and backup in the user's mind. Users often mix those ideas together because from their point of view, the file is either there or it is not. But for a technician, the difference matters a great deal. A synchronized file is not the same thing as a full backup, and cloud convenience is not the same thing as guaranteed recovery of every version of every file forever. A document may be available across devices because of syncing, but that does not mean the user has a separate long-term backup strategy. The support value here is in helping the user understand what iCloud is doing for them and what it is not doing for them. If a file is missing on several devices, the issue may be account sync, network access, or a file management choice rather than sudden hardware failure. When technicians explain iCloud in plain language, they help users stop assuming that every cloud feature means complete protection from every kind of data loss. Synchronization also creates support questions when timing and connectivity get involved. A user may save or move a file and expect that change to appear everywhere immediately, but syncing depends on the Mac being signed in properly, having network access, and successfully communicating with Apple services. If any part of that chain is interrupted, the user may get a result that feels inconsistent. A file may appear on one Mac and not another. A recent edit may not show up yet. A folder may look different between devices. These situations do not always mean something is badly broken. Often they mean the support issue is about sync status, account connection, or user expectations rather than damaged local storage. For beginners, the lesson is very practical. When the user says a file is missing, ask whether it is missing everywhere or only on one device. That one question helps separate a local finder problem from a broader iCloud synchronization problem, and that makes the next support step much clearer. FileVault is another important feature that sounds more advanced than it needs to sound. The easiest way to understand it is that FileVault helps protect the contents of the Mac storage by encrypting the data. Encryption means the data is stored in a protected form so that someone who does not have proper access cannot simply read the drive if they get hold of the machine or its storage. For users, that can be a strong protection, especially on portable devices that may be lost or stolen. For technicians, FileVault matters because it changes what kind of recovery, startup, and access expectations are realistic. A beginner does not need to memorize the inner workings of encryption to support it well. The important thing is to understand the purpose. FileVault is not there to make the Mac annoying. It is there to protect the user's information, and support decisions need to respect that protection instead of treating it like an optional decoration that does not really matter. The support side of FileVault becomes clearer when you think about access and recovery. If the data on a Mac is protected through FileVault, then sign-in credentials and recovery options become much more important. A user who forgets key account information, loses track of recovery details, or does not understand how the feature was set up may face more serious trouble than they would on an unprotected system. That does not make FileVault a bad idea. It means security and convenience are always balancing each other. A beginner technician should understand that when FileVault is active, you cannot treat the device like an open box of files that anyone can easily examine. That is the point of the feature. Support, therefore, includes helping users understand the importance of their account access, their recovery methods, and the fact that strong protection also means stronger dependence on doing those identity pieces correctly. Good technicians respect the protection and explain it clearly instead of promising easy shortcuts that the feature was designed to prevent. Time Machine is one of the most helpful built-in backup features on macOS because it gives users a more practical way to protect themselves from normal mistakes and everyday data loss. The easiest way to explain it is that Time Machine is built to keep backups over time, so the user can return to older versions of files or recover data after a problem. That makes it different from simple synchronization. A file sync through iCloud may appear on multiple devices, but Time Machine is more about recovery and history. That matters because people do not only lose files through hardware failure. They also lose files by deleting the wrong thing, saving over an older version, or realizing too late that the content they need changed yesterday, not today. A beginner technician should see Time Machine as one of the clearest answers to the question of what happens when something important is missing and the user needs a path back. It is not flashy, but it is one of the most useful features macOS offers for everyday support. Time Machine is especially valuable because it supports a calmer support conversation. Without a backup, a missing file can turn into panic very quickly. With a good backup history, the conversation becomes much more manageable because there may be a way to recover earlier content or restore lost material without treating the event like a total disaster. Beginners should also understand that Time Machine does not only matter after something bad happens. Its value depends on being set up and working before the problem occurs. That is why support around Time Machine includes checking whether the backup destination is available, whether backups have been running, and whether the user understands the purpose of the feature. A technician does not need to turn every user into a backup expert. The important lesson is simple. Time Machine provides a history of protection, and that history is often what makes the difference between a bad day and a catastrophic one when a file, folder, or even a larger amount of data needs to be recovered. Another important beginner mindset is not to confuse Time Machine with ordinary file storage. A backup destination is not just another place to dump random content. Its real value comes from the fact that it is preserving recoverable versions of data over time in a way designed for restoration. That is what makes it a support tool rather than just a storage location. If a user says they need the version from last week, or they deleted something important, or their Mac had a problem and now they need to get their environment back, Time Machine belongs in that conversation. For beginners, it helps to connect it directly to recovery questions. Finder helps with active file management. iCloud helps with synchronization and connected access. Time Machine helps with backup and recovery history. Once those roles are separated in your mind, Mac support becomes much easier because you stop expecting one feature to do the job of another and start choosing the right feature for the kind of problem you are actually facing. Terminal often scares beginners the most, mostly because it looks plain and text-based and does not explain itself the way visual tools do. The easiest way to lower that fear is to think of Terminal as a direct text interface to the Mac, not as a place reserved for elite users. It allows technicians to ask the system for information, check locations, confirm file paths, and perform certain tasks more directly than the graphical interface sometimes allows. For basic support work, Terminal matters because it can help when Finder is not enough, when a path needs to be checked exactly, or when a quick system question is easier to answer in text than by opening several windows. The goal for beginners is not to become command experts overnight. The goal is to understand that Terminal is a tool for clarity and directness. It can help confirm what the system thinks is true, and that can be very useful when the desktop view feels slow, unclear, or incomplete. A safe beginner approach to Terminal is to treat it first as a way to inspect and understand, not as a place to make risky changes. Many early support tasks in Terminal are about seeing where you are, what files exist in a location, whether a folder path is correct, or what kind of basic system information the Mac is reporting. That makes Terminal useful when the technician needs precision. In Finder, two folders may look similar, but in Terminal the exact path is clearer. A connected drive may be visible, but Terminal can help confirm how the system sees it. A file may appear to be missing, but Terminal can help check whether it exists in the location the user believes it should. This is very helpful for beginners because it turns Terminal from a scary blank screen into a direct question-and-answer tool. Used that way, it supports careful troubleshooting rather than reckless experimentation, which is exactly the mindset beginners need. What makes these macOS tools so useful is not that any one of them solves everything. Their real value shows up when you see how they work together in normal support situations. A user says their file is gone, so Finder helps you check where they are looking, iCloud helps you think about whether the file should have synced elsewhere, and Time Machine helps answer whether an older copy can be restored. A user forgets their Mac at a cafe, and FileVault suddenly matters because it protects the data on the device. A user says an external drive is not showing the way they expect, so Finder helps with the visible side, while Terminal may help confirm what the system sees more directly. This is the main support lesson for beginners. Do not ask one feature to explain everything. Ask which part of the problem is about file management, which part is about sync, which part is about backup, which part is about protection, and which part may require more direct inspection of the system. A very practical Mac support flow for this topic starts by asking a few simple questions. Is the problem about finding a file, protecting data, restoring older data, syncing content between devices, or checking a system detail more directly? Once that is clear, the right tool becomes easier to choose. Finder belongs in file organization and visible storage questions. iCloud belongs in synchronization and connected account behavior questions. FileVault belongs in protection and secure access questions. Time Machine belongs in recovery and backup history questions. Terminal belongs in direct inspection and basic text-based support tasks when the graphical tools are not enough. Beginners get overwhelmed when they see these as 5 separate advanced topics, but they become much easier when each one is tied to the kind of question it answers best. That is what turns a long list of Mac features into a practical support toolkit that even a beginner can use with confidence. By the end of this episode, the main idea should feel clear and useful. Finder helps users and technicians manage files, folders, drives, and everyday storage locations in a visual way. iCloud helps keep certain data and files connected across devices, but it should be understood as synchronization and service support, not as a replacement for every kind of backup. FileVault protects the data on the Mac through encryption, which is important for security and important for support expectations around access and recovery. Time Machine provides backup history, so lost or older content can often be restored more calmly. Terminal gives technicians a direct text-based way to inspect and confirm what the system is doing. When beginners learn to connect each of these tools to file management, synchronization, encryption, backup, and basic support work, macOS stops feeling like a collection of unfamiliar names and starts feeling like a practical platform with clear tools for clear problems.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.